What's up, freaks? This rip was brought to you by River. River's a Bitcoin company built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners the right way. There's no trusted third parties. They build all their infrastructure. They have free DCA because they know it's the best way to buy Bitcoin. So if you want to buy Bitcoin, you want to mine Bitcoin, you want to send Bitcoin over the Lightning Network, you want to plug into their Lightning Network API. If you're a developer, they're building all these tools for you. They also encourage self-custody. Again, they're Bitcoiners. They want to provide an on-ramp for you and then teach you and encourage you to take control of your own Bitcoin. And they're doing this. It's a beautiful company. If you do hold Bitcoin on the exchange, you can know for sure, since they don't rely on any third parties, they don't lend your Bitcoin out, they don't speculate with your Bitcoin. Your Bitcoin is held in a multi-sig wallet with 100% reserves. Okay? So go to river.com/TFTC, take advantage of the no-fee DCA. You set up your dollar cost average. You don't pay any fees on those buys. If you're a developer, they have their Lightning Network Services API that you can build on. You can send over Lightning. You can mine via River as well. You may have your exchange. You may be comfortable with it, but have you tried River yet? It's a question you have to ask yourself. If the answer is no, go try it. That's where all the Bitcoiners are hanging out. That's where I get my Bitcoin as well. River.com/TFTC. Thank you guys for listening. If you're listening on YouTube, please subscribe, set the notifications up as well. We're going to be putting out a lot of content this year. If you want to subscribe to the podcast feed as well, if you're not around your computer or not listening on YouTube, but you want to catch the podcast on the podcasting feeds, subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. And if you want to learn more about Bitcoin, I write a newsletter almost daily during the week. Go to tftc.io, subscribe on the website, and you'll get pure signal on Bitcoin, macroeconomics, geopolitics, whatever tickles my fancy that day. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for supporting the show. If you can subscribe, rate, review, goes a long way. We're trying to blow this up in 2023. Enjoy the rip.
You've had a dynamic where money's become freer than free.
If you talk about a Fed just gone nuts, all the central banks going nuts.
So it's all acting like safe haven.
I believe that in a world where central bankers are tripping over themselves to devalue their currency, Bitcoin wins. In the world of fiat currencies, Bitcoin is the victor.
I mean, that's part of the bull case for Bitcoin.
If you're not paying attention, you probably should be.
Yeah, Austin's not like other cities too, where it's not like a walkable city per se, unless you're like downtown.
Downtown is sort of semi-walkable. I've been trying to walk around.
Have you gotten on the trail yet?
The trail, I'm not sure.
Around the river? Have you walked around the river?
I walked along the river a bit. I'm actually staying near the river so I can see it.
Yeah.
That was really nice. And I went up to this bit where you can see the city. A few of the guys took me there.
Yeah.
We did a little bit of like a mini free sort of tour of Austin and a peacock sanctuary.
Yeah, you were talking about it. I haven't been to the Peacock.
See, maybe I know Austin more than you know. The Peacock Sanctuary, that was quite, it's just this, seems, well, I wouldn't say random, but there's this place which is open to the public, it's completely free, and they've been rearing peacocks. It's sort of in the city, and you can walk around and there's just different peacocks in different stages of plume. Sometimes in the tree, so you have to be careful in the tree and don't want to be right beneath them.
Yeah, I'm going to have to take the boys to that at some point soon. It's
really simple places, not too big, but you just can wander around. Just walk straight in. There's no requirements for tickets or anything. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of free activities here. Austin's a very active city too, which I like.
Very outdoorsy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You feel compelled to get out.
But is it like this weather all year round, or is it just, because right now the weather seems perfect, but they said like a little bit before it can get quite cold and afterwards it can get really, really hot, or is it consistent?
Yeah, it's just in the last few weeks that it started to warm up. It was pretty cold this winter. And then this time last year was already like 100 degrees. So and I only have 2 years to go off of right now.
And 100 degrees in Celsius that's Fahrenheit, obviously.
Yeah, in Celsius, what is it? It's got to be 30.
33.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's still pretty hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pumped you're in town. I didn't realize you were in town until Saturday. You hit me up. I was like, oh, damn.
Yeah. So I was in Orlando. So last month was Asia. This month is the US, and next month is Europe. So, but I was in Orlando last week, and later the second half of this week, and for a week I'll be in New York, and then obviously Miami. So I thought, well, this is not too far away from Austin, and I haven't been, and there's one of my co-founders literally is here, and other people. So some of our investors are here. Let me go and check it out. But it was a very last minute. Why don't I spend some time here?
There's a lot going on down here. It's a little quiet in the comments today, but it's great when we get the whole crew in here. Justin, the Mutiny guys, everybody's vibing. Uncle, the godfather of Austin Bit Devs, Justin Moon. I think you'll be
the nicest guy in Bitcoin. That's what I call him.
He doesn't come in that often anymore. He's focused in his house.
He's heads
in
down.
His environment.
Yeah, he's super heads down. Yeah, we're all heads down. Sometimes we have to because we're so focused on trying to deliver stuff, it can get quite stressful. But internally generated stress. Like I never get spots on my face, but I just had this eruption of spots last week, and he I think had a similar thing. He had like some rash on his face. So. But like no one's pressuring you, just you're pressuring yourself because you're so excited about showing stuff and not for what we're making not being hypothetical but being real.
Yeah, no, you guys are working on something extremely important and powerful. So I can imagine there's a lot of pressure on the team, but
it's coming now, one way or another. It's coming very soon.
Yeah, which I'm pumped about. But that's one thing I wanted to start out talking about is given your experience in the space, starting Coinfloor, having your experience there, successfully starting that company and leaving it, and now starting Fedi. How does the build out of Fedi compare to what you experienced at Coinfloor?
Wow. It's actually very different. And I think Coinfloor was this Bitcoin exchange, and we started in 2013, and we went on to be, well, at one point we were by far the biggest Bitcoin exchange in the UK. One day we hit 70% like market share in the UK for the UK volume. And we built out a team, very large, serving most of Europe. But there were areas where there were lessons for me. So let me put it this way, lessons which I would have preferred to not have to do or repeat, which is good because you can then take that on to whatever thing you work on next. So when it came to Fedi, I think it was very clear to me that I wanted to take all those learnings and apply them to anything else I worked on. And so one thing was I had a number of things I'm truly passionate about, and sometimes the demands of trying to make money and so on make you forget what you're truly passionate about. And I was determined that would never be an issue again. I only want to work with people who have the same passion and have investors who have the same passion. Because my belief is actually, if you're really, really passionate about it and you work with people who share the same vision and mission, you'll actually, all the things like the financial compensation and so on will actually be even more successful anyway, because the best way to go that fits with your passions is going to be the best way for your business as well. You'll attract the customers who share the same vision as well. So that's, I think, one of the biggest learnings, that here it feels like family and first and business second. I'm really, really passionate about what I'm doing, and everybody who's working on it is 100% passionate about it. And it just so happens that a commercial vehicle is the best way to achieve it. But if it wasn't, if it was a purely open source vehicle, then we would have stayed open source. We just really that this is the best way to continue on with our passions.
Yeah. No, because I remember having many conversations with Justin before you guys linked up, and he was dead laser focused on, all right, I want to start a company and I want to do it with people who get it and are killers in their own verticals and their own expertise. And it seems like he's found that team with Fedi, with you, Eric, Skylar, knowing many different members of the founding team. It's really been cool to watch from afar. We're relatively close, actually. You guys come together and
I don't know about me. I think I've got quite a lot of experience, but when I look at, if you just start with my co-founders, I don't know, I could get emotional about it really, but I bumped into Eric at Hackers Congress, and I was in the middle of selling Coinfloor, and so this was, a Bitcoin exchange in the UK, so there's a lot of oversight there. We had a subsidiary which was one of the first regulated exchanges in Europe. Our price ticker for Bitcoin GBP was listed on the New York Stock Exchange, so they used the Coinfloor price feed. So there was a lot of oversight there, which is the norm. But I was always interested in going to something like Hackers Congress. But as the CEO of an exchange, you're never going. That's just not good optics. So now I knew I was selling Coinfloor, and it was only a few months away from being sold. It was pretty much a done deal. I thought, well, I can finally do something I really, really wanted to do. There's like 3 things I really wanted to do. I've only done one of them, and there's 2 more on my list that I've always wanted to do for several years now. But one was to go to Hackers Congress, Parallel Police. And I thought, stone the crows, I'm going to go off and do this. And I went and went there just as a visitor. I didn't announce I was going, and just went around. I had also a very clear view in my mind that we have to find a viable alternative to people using exchanges as their mechanism for custody. And I was looking for solutions to that. I had some ideas. All of those were nowhere near as good as Fedimints. As Eric, when I bumped into him by pure accident, he politely told me why they wouldn't work, and I'm forever grateful. But we literally, and neither of us smoke, there's nothing wrong with smoking, but neither of us smoke. But most of the interesting conversations often happen outside when people are smoking. So there was a few people, I was talking to someone, and he said, look, I've got to go out for a smoke. So I went out with him just to carry on a conversation. It was interesting. And Eric, I think as well, was talking to someone else, and they went out. And so there was a group of people just chatting. I started chatting with Eric, just passing the time. I talked about some of the ideas I'm working on. He politely told me they wouldn't work. And I went, okay, that makes sense. And I asked him what he's working. He mentioned Fedimint, and I was like, this is a really interesting idea for what it was presented to solve, but actually it's way bigger an idea than you're initially presenting it. It's like you have a boulder on a mountain, and there's another mountain, and every day you have to move the boulder Sisyphean like from one mountain to another. And you're incredibly gifted and technical, and you think, well, maybe I can invent this device, like a platform that I can put the boulder on, and it can go against the laws of gravity and then just float over to the other mountain. So that saves my job of moving the boulder across, which is a useful problem to solve. But then I come along and go, you've just invented anti-gravity. You solved that problem, but this is way bigger than this thing. You solved like a much bigger problem. But it's like, oh yeah, you're right. Maybe it is that. And but so I don't know if I would have met him if it wasn't through pure luck. But we have completely different backgrounds, completely different ways in which we came into Bitcoin, completely different circles that we walked around in. But philosophically, we're completely aligned. And then in Miami, Eric meets with Justin, and again they hit it off, etc. They then approach me as well. And if you look at us, just the difference of skills and backgrounds are just very different parts of the world. I think they're incredibly gifted in what they do and what they're capable of doing. And our philosophies are very, very aligned, but from completely different backgrounds. And what is the chance of us all meeting is like, I don't know. Sometimes I have to sort of think, I sometimes just look up and go, this is sort of ridiculous. How did this all happen? And all the other people we've met as well, and all of our backgrounds have just sort of come together on this one project, and it all is useful. All of that stuff, all those chance encounters, we're able to utilize in this one project. So every day I just feel super grateful, and I just want to work as hard as I can to keep it going.
Yeah. It's very serendipitous.
It's like almost like you start feeling, something is happening here that's not.
Yeah, it's some higher power. Like, all right, you guys.
I constantly think about it.
Yeah.
And then it continues to happen. The people that we're having join the organization, it's just amazing people, and who maybe made the decisions that, no, I'm happy where I am, and all of a sudden, okay, I've changed my mind because of this. We're doing something important. I think we're working with incredible people, and for me, I'm doing this because I love working with the people I'm working with. We love the problem that we're trying to solve, and we'll work on it until we make it happen.
Yeah, and I think this is a good point for anybody who might be new to the show, new to Bitcoin, who may not understand the concept of a Fedimint, how it fits into Bitcoin and the stacks and the layers above it, how the Fedimint as the open source protocol works, and then what you guys are trying to do at Fedi.
Okay, that's a good question, and it's been something that a few people have been unclear on, and we're going to make that clearer. But that was also because we're taking the approach of let's build it, and if you talk about it, and I'll explain it again now, I'm happy to, it's still, the idea is quite big, and it's hard for people to sort of get their heads around it because it's a new concept. When they see it in their hand, it'll make a lot more sense. So we're focusing really hard to give something that people have in their hand. And Fedi, the aim is for it to be in people's hands this month in May. So a version focused on developers, but I'm sure enthusiasts will download it. Just like Lightning, we said it's just for building right now, and it'd be reckless to use it, but people went off and did that. I'm sure that will happen, but it's focused for builders. But let's start with Fedi, and then how Fedimint relates to that, and Bitcoin and Lightning and so on. Because the narrative before has been Bitcoin and Lightning and working this way, but now it's gonna be with us only in a matter of weeks. We can talk about it the other way around. So the key insight is that right now something's wrong. There's trouble at mill, as we would say in northern England. Something's wrong in the state of the web and technology. You've got big tech, and you've got certain large organizations and institutions who we use to make our lives faster, cheaper, better, easier, which they do in the most part, but there is a problem, and we see it increasingly. We see situations where some of them, not all, but some of them, I would say, misuse, abuse, or lose our money and our data in one way or another. And the reason why that happens is because the wrong people are in control. They can help and assist, but they are the wrong people are in control. And so the insight for us is what is needed is a way, if you're skilled enough, individuals, but at scale, we need a way for communities, for families, for organizations, for companies to be able to take charge, take control of their own money and their own data. And so that we don't make the mistakes that the existing system makes, it needs to be done in a way where there is no single point of risk, no single point of control. So at every level, there is no single point of control, no single point of risk. And so that tool, that technology that can do that is what we call, it's a new category, but we call it a federated OS. And Fedi, over time, the first version won't be the full realized vision, but over time, Fedi aims to be the world's first federated OS. Now, if you're using Fedi, what that means is to understand what that is, you have to understand Fedimint, and that's the power behind Fedi and the federated OS concept. Doesn't have to be Fedi because these are open protocols. Other people can produce this. I'm sure they will in time. So Fedimint is this community custody protocol. It's one of the most active actually now projects in the Bitcoin ecosystem. I thought it was 20, but now there's like 50 people who are contributing to Fedimint. It was originally, the idea was invented by Eric, one of, Justin, me and Eric, one of my co-founders. And what it allows you to do is create these community custody, we call them federations, community custody federations run by trusted members of the community. We call them guardians. And on top of custody, this community custody, you also have a level of privacy. You also have a level of scalability. And both of those things are made possible using this protocol called Xiaomi and eCash, which is an incredible protocol. And you also have extensibility. It's you can add other functionality, and there's actually no limits to the functionality you can add. And you run it on behalf of a community. And so each Fedi user or any other federated OS user can connect to multiple federations, and they have this one overall operating view of the system. So they can see, just like you have multiple Slack groups that you're part of, but you, in your experience, you see multiple, you see it as one view, or you have multiple groups on WhatsApp or multiple Discord channels, etc. You can have multiple federations you're part of, but from your Fedi, you can access and view all of those and choose independently what money and what data I secure with what federation. And each federation serves, because they are the servant to the users, serves tens of thousands of Fedi users. So when you combine it together, this each Fedi user connected to multiple federations, and each federation connected to multiple, serving thousands or more, between tens of thousands of Fedi users. This creates this sort of global, decentralized, federated OS network, where hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of federations run by communities and companies around the world are serving hundreds of millions, if not billions, of Fedi users around the world, all powered by Bitcoin and all connected to each other seamlessly with Lightning, with the Lightning Network. So you don't have a disadvantage of having lots of these small Bitcoin scaling layers, because we have this incredibly reliable Lightning Network to settle between them seamlessly. And so you then don't have to have one monolithic scaling layer for the entire world, where if it goes down as a bug, everybody in the world goes down. If it's one in a million and it has an issue, that is a resilient system. And even then, for it to have an issue, it's resistant to one or more of guardians having an issue. So even at the federation level, it's resistant, but also at a system level as well, it's resistant, because there's not just one layer two. So it's able to, in terms of what can you do with this, anything that you can do with a mobile operating system, a desktop operating system, or a web service that's used for the millions of websites on the internet, you can run on a federation, or any number of federations. Each federation can choose which ones they run, just like each computer can choose which apps they download to it, but without any single point of risk, out any single point of control. So the sky's the limit. Of course, you're going to have features like, we've seen ideas like Bitcoin-backed stable value USD.
That won the hackathon, right?
That won the hackathon, and that was incredible. It was an anonymous group of people built this feature, and it was clearly the strongest application. So they won the first prize, and we'll integrate support for it because it was the winner. But it's also an incredibly powerful idea. It can represent any capital asset, but be actually backed with Bitcoin, using an idea similar to the concept that was put forward by Taj Dreijer, discrete log contracts for difference. But that would require opcode changes to Bitcoin to be implemented, but you can implement it on Fedi. And it's also, it allows you to gain discovery, because if multiple federations start using it, then that will add credence to the debate of whether we should add the opcode to support it. Because right now, with a lot of discussions, is there going to be demand or not? Well, if you see this grassroots demand through federations, then you can say, okay, well, let's add this feature directly to the base protocol, because we don't have to guess if there's demand anymore. We know there's demand.
Well,
and that's just one. I mean, there's secure password managers. Why hold my passwords on LastPass, where it could potentially then be hacked, when instead I hold it within my communities, and my community can help me recover if I lose my password. So it's not just money, it's also data.
Yeah. And the password doesn't have access to that information anyway, because similar, like LastPass holds that information on their servers, but within the Mint, it's encrypted. And only
it'll be encrypted, and it would require a combination of different guardians to recover. Or it doesn't have to even be the guardians. It could be that the guardians are holding it encrypted, but you as a user could, depending on how I'm just brainstorming, apps can be developed how you want. You as a user could select 3 of your friends within the Mint to be the people who verify, but they're not the people who hold it. The guardians are holding it, so they hold it, but it's encrypted, so they can't do anything with it without the verification from the friends. So you could create a module which is a federated password manager. And also, by the way, your password could be stored on 3 or 4 different federations. So if anyone, for example, I mean, anything that you can run on a website or on a mobile phone or on a computer, you could run on a federation. So that's why we say it's this federated operating system.
Yeah.
But it's an operating system with no, because even if it's running on your computer, if your computer has no backup and it goes off, it's still a single point of risk. Yeah. And many people should make backups, but they don't do that. But if you store in a federation, it's automatically being federated and backed up for you. So you don't have to think about the process of maintaining backups and recoveries and so on.
Yeah. Another one of the first apps is encrypted chat that users can use.
Yes, again, chat. So again, do I want my chat to be hosted by a third party who may be able to oversee what I'm looking at or not? And they may say that it's encrypted and so on, but I have to trust their view on that. Well, again, within my community, it may make sense for me to take control of the conversations related to my community, or within my family, take control. Just like in a Slack channel, I can have for a company, I can have conversations related to my company, and there's a different Slack channel for a gaming community that I'm part of, and we talk about that. But the issue is all those conversations are running on Slack servers in one place, so you have to trust that Slack is not overseeing every single conversation. Here with federations, you don't have to trust that they are running on different systems, provably.
Yeah. No, it's pretty mind-blowing when you begin to think about it, and that's the other cool thing, particularly with Eric and Justin, in the way they've approached us methodically and really took the time to build it out the right way, using Rust and then building in a modular fashion. So, and
Nick's Bitcoin on the background as well, which I think we're going to see. It's hard to do that at the beginning, but I'm just blown away by, we're going to see the benefit of doing it the right way in terms of ability to provably build reliably on different sort of bare metal, because you've got this such powerful package and delivery management system.
In Nix, right?
Yeah, in Nix, for example. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what are things that are on your radar? I know we just described the chat app and password manager, but what are some of the financial applications that you see coming in the idea space around Fedi and Fedimints, particularly, that people aren't aware of? Obviously, you guys had that hackathon, the stable pool came out of that, a bunch of other cool stuff came out of that. But again, I think people think of Fedimints and they think of instant private transactions within these mints and across these mints as the main use case. But it seems like there's...
Yeah, I think that is something that's possible, but just like that's possible using the web, and that's possible using your computer. But it's one of many things that's possible. So other things that we're seeing, for example, and I can guarantee you that once we release this to the builder community, which is what we're going to focus on. The real killer apps, that these will be very useful things, but the real killer app where people are going to be falling over themselves to set up Fedimints to install are going to be things that we just can't imagine. That's the nature. If you look at Windows, if you look at DOS, it was the word processor and the spreadsheet that people invested $2,000, which at that time in the 80s was a lot of money. It's more like $10,000 to buy, because it was, they didn't buy it because of the computer, they bought it because they wanted to use a word processor. With the Mac, it was desktop publishing and graphics design. And again, the developers of this didn't envisage, they thought it was going to be a nicer way of doing word processing, but actually it was a whole way of being able to construct and design in this visual way became the killer app. And it's this, and you see it again and again and again for even gaming platforms. It was certain games, and I'm buying the gaming platform for that game. So there's always a killer app, and it's always some sort of indie developer or so on creates it. Beat Saber was Oculus more recently. So what's going to happen is someone's going to make a Fedimint module. It could be stability pools, because that can represent any capital asset, which is, I don't know, $400 trillion of capital assets. Any capital asset in the world could be represented by that. Any currency, any stock, any derivative, any bond, any commodity. I mean, that's pretty lot. That could, that's quite a lot there. Or it could be someone is working on, I think a few people are working on things like simplicity-based Fedimint modules. So again, I can then start adding, but again, that's a meta app in that it can now represent any simplicity contract, and there's a near infinite set of simplicity contracts I can write. So it won't necessarily be that, but it will be some of the simplicity contracts written on that will be really powerful, and I won't be able to imagine all of those. Or what could be another thing that's those two are already pretty big, as I said.
And the simplicity thing was something that Justin and Eric worked on at a hackathon. Or something, right?
Justin worked on that. I think there's a couple of teams are working on more polished versions of that right now, for example. There are other things that people are working on that I want to wait for them to announce they're working on. Yeah. But these, if you just take those two things, they're just incredibly flexible in terms of what they can do.
Yeah.
There will be community, as people looking at ways in which you can have community run and hosted pools of capital. So, for example, a community might want to receive money not just for a particular person, but for the purpose of the community to then vote and use in some way to the benefit of the community. And that could be for a company, it could be for a family fund, whatever. Anytime you want to have this collective pool of capital, and then you want to own and then deploy, maybe based on some sort of, and then how you deploy it.
We want to go on a trip. We want to go on a trip next year.
So and how you deploy it will be based on, there could be many variations on that. So it could be based on voting, and so we vote to use the money this way, or it could be based on hitting a certain target of revenue. It could be triggered. There could be interest in providing services for others. So, for example, you have chat, but what about Nostr? A Nostr relay, at some point, some of these relays will charge fees. Well, but the effort to run it might be complex. You could run that at a community level on behalf of not just the community, but anyone in the world, and the revenues that it creates go to this community fund. Yeah. So all of a sudden, communities can provide infrastructure for the decentralized web and generate revenue for that, for the benefit of the community. These are some of the things that people are starting to think about, but I can guarantee you they're going to think about many more things than we're just going to make it incredibly easy to set up, incredibly easy to build for. I mean, set up 5 minutes or less, building apps 2 hours or less, you should be able to start building apps for it, and then just leave it to the, and also the other thing about Fedi as well that's missing, if you look at the Bitcoin stack, the sort of grassroots Bitcoin stack is Bitcoin, it's Lightning, I think Noster's coming out, because Noster's like a discovery layer. It allows you to discover resources without knowing the other person, whatever that may be. It might be tweets, but it could be offers for services or products or anything else. So it replaces the discovery elements of Google, of Facebook, of Amazon. If you think about what they are, it's a payment system, it's a bit of storage, and it's discovery. And that represents much of the web. So Nostr provides you a decentralized, censorship-resistant way of discovery. And then Fedimint allows you to add functional extension. It's your scaling layer for functionality and so on. The other thing that we need is the last piece is a way for making people know around the world that this stuff all exists.
Yeah.
And that's another big part of Fedi, which is over the next 2 years, we plan, and that's where a big part of what we raise, we plan to hire hundreds of Fedi masters, Fedi knights, so there's a sci-fi link there, and Fedi ambassadors. And I always say to locate, educate, and inculcate communities around the world, north, south, east, west, starting in the global south because it's just low-hanging fruit and so on, but we will be hiring globally. And so, yeah, by the end of 2026, we will only be approaching 500 of these. It's also more cost effective to hire in the global south. You can get a lot more people, but we will hire everywhere. And they will make myself and Justin and other members of my team like Renata look like we're, on Valium and super chilled. They're going to be like local versions, super passionate about Bitcoin, super passionate, understanding the system, but also passionate about their local area. And so if you have the Fedi app and you want to understand more what you can do with it or how to set it up or so on, there will be someone local who can meet up with you, speak your own language, understand your culture, and walk you through it. So we'll have online resources for education, which is great, but we will have people on the ground as well. And they will be educating people about Bitcoin, about Lightning, about Nostr, about Fedimint, and the entire Bitcoin ecosystem. It's because the crazy thing about Fedimint and federations is, think of it as an operating system. Imagine an operating system without a computer to run on, or without a network connection to connect to the rest of the world, or without apps. The most complex piece of software on your computer is your operating system. But without the rest of the stuff, it can't do anything. It's an enabler for the rest of the stuff. And it's the same for a federation. You have to have Bitcoin nodes to run on. So we have to then recommend, you maybe should use Start9, maybe you should use Nodal, maybe you should use Umbrel, maybe you should use Raspberry Blitz or so on. You have to have the connection to the rest of the Bitcoin network. So then we'll say, well, maybe you should use, and forgive me if I don't say the names, but maybe you should Voltage, Ibex, Mercado, maybe you should use Zebedee, maybe you should. So we have to find ways we have to advise them that because the Federation doesn't do that. And then also you need apps. So we'll say, well, on and off ramp, maybe you should use Bitrefill, maybe you should use Bitnob, maybe you should use Neutron Pay or so on, depending on, and the solution will be different depending on the country you're in and so on. And then maybe you should use this module. Maybe if you want to have, if it's important to have stable value in USD, maybe you can use a stable coin, or maybe you can use stability pools or stable sats or whatever. So we have to promote all this other stuff for a community to get the value. So every time a federation goes into a community, all this other stuff goes in automatically as part of it. So we win by helping the entire Bitcoin ecosystem win. There is no way else. You can't just say use Fedimint, but have no machine to run it on, have no node, have no access to the Light network, and do nothing with it. It's like saying I've got Microsoft Windows and no apps and no machine and no internet. It needs the rest of that other stuff because it's just the operating system. It's not the actual thing you do. It's the thing that allows you to run the other stuff. Yeah,
it needs the network effect and the
apps and everything else.
Yeah, the vibrant building. And that's the one thing, like boots on the ground, I think, particularly in the West, a lot of people discount that. But in the areas of the world that you're targeting first, global South, like boots on the ground is extremely important because people need that.
Yeah. I mean, but we have boots on the ground here. So here is the massive advantage we have is places like Bitcoin Commons, and we have this incredibly vibrant and well educated in the ways of Bitcoin group of people. So we already have our knights and ambassadors and so on, who are well resourced and are very sophisticated in how they can communicate. So the things that we're doing here are just amazing. So if we added a lot of people here, which we could do and we will do, it's less needed than in other places where the message is not so clear. So if we have this, but the demand is very strong there as well. But we will work with people here, maybe on a funding or supporting or sponsoring things versus hiring full time, because there's already existing network of people who already have communities that know and trust them.
Yeah.
But one way or another, we're going to tap into these communities, and either if the infrastructure is not there, hire the infrastructure, and if it is there, just support and fund it.
Yeah. And when you guys are successful in getting into these areas and getting Fedi adopted, what's your biggest hope for success of like how this, not for Fedi particularly, but for the communities that begin leveraging Fedi? Like, how does it help them at the end of the day?
So it depends on where they are in the world. But like in the global south, or if they're living under the yoke of authoritarian regimes and dictatorships, they either have a lack of choice or they cannot trust the choices they have. And so that is a 0 to 1 scenario. So, for example, if you're in certain countries and if you receive money from the wrong person, it could lead to significant negative consequences for you in terms of your liberty and even your life, if you use the traditional systems. So being able to use an alternative approach like Bitcoin is a game changer for you. Now, if you can do that using a self-custodial system, it's great, but sometimes that's a challenge to do for various reasons: technical acumen, cost, complexity, and so on. Fedi is something where we can have people on the ground or parts of their community who can help them set up, potentially run and manage their infrastructure remotely on their behalf in terms of the guardians and the servers they're running, but provide it to a community in a region of the world where it's difficult to get stuff into that region safely on behalf of the community. So and so they therefore now have the ability to receive payment on and off ramp locally, etc. Then you've got places in, say, the global south where they have options, but they're incredibly expensive. People talk about M-Pesa a lot, which is, as educated people in large parts of East Africa on the idea of digital money. So in terms of usage of digital money, they're some of the most advanced in the world. People pay for transport with digital money. They pay for goods and services with digital money. They receive salaries in digital money already. But these are centralized systems run by one organization, and they can be quite expensive. Average fees are 2 to 4%, and they can be as high in albeit extreme cases, but as high as 30, 40% to use M-Pesa. And M-Pesa is like the marquee, or the flag bearer of how it should be done right. So now compare that. But what you do with M-Pesa is functionally can be done with Bitcoin and Lightning. But you're not paying 2 to 4% average all the way up to 40%. You're paying, basis points, and that's and on consistently. So just in that case, that's a significant cost saving. And then don't get me started with remittance. I mean, the remittance costs will then be, you're starting to average in sort of double digits as the average. And again, it can be incredibly high. So just as a cost saving, it's massive for that part of the world. And then I just think anybody who values the ability for they or their family and friends to be able to have some control over their money and their sensitive data. It's not all data. If it's a cat picture or something, it may not be that important. It depends on the cat, obviously. Some people really love their cats, but But if it's very sensitive data or very valuable data to you and your community, and it's or your money, you may want an increased level of control, and that's important for anywhere in the world where they value freedom and liberty.
Yeah. And to think of like the human ingenuity this could potentially unlock when people don't have fear that they're being surveilled. Because that's another important thing to mention, the way the blinded signatures work in these Chaumian e-cash systems. Like you mentioned the example of people operating within systems and they send a particular person money that could affect them negatively in the real world. And within these mints, the Federation members, the Guardians, have no idea who's sending what to who, especially after you get enough people in the mint. It becomes almost heuristically impossible to try to deduce who's sending to who. And so when you have that fear wiped away of being like, hey, I don't feel like sending money to this person because I think it's going to come back to haunt me. And then not even just sending money, but sharing pictures, sharing information, particular political views, whatever it may be. When that self-censorship stops and people become emboldened and begin.
Yeah, I think that, as I said, there's incredible capabilities that are unlocked by the use of Fedimints, and that's part of it. And other parts are the incredible ability for scale, also the incredible ability to extend functionality to meet the needs of your community. When you combine it all together, it's a very powerful proposition. So when we were looking at, I mean, if you're going to try and build this sort of federated OS, I don't think there's any other solution that made sense for us to use other than basing on Bitcoin, using Lightning as the mechanism to connect with the rest of the ecosystem, and using Fedimint as the protocol to act as this base for any given federation. It is possible, of course, because it's so flexible, for people to also take off or add things. Not only can they add, but they can take off. So in theory, if certain, for example, companies decided that they wanted to not use a feature, they could also do that. And that's the nature of the system being so flexible. It wouldn't be a true operating system if you couldn't do that. However, by default, you get that baked in and you don't have to think about it. And for most people's use cases, it makes sense to use the system as it is by default.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating, the potential this could unlock. And then you combine it, we were talking yesterday, with something like Gridless. Right? We want to talk about it like empowering local communities, get them an app like Fedi, and then give them the ability to leverage stranded energy sources to mine Bitcoin as well. Like you could see little strong economies popping up all over.
Yeah, what were you saying about Gridless yesterday?
I mean, it's just the ability to monetize that stranded hydro, drive down the price and electrify a local community and make it economically viable, most important.
Yeah, and you can imagine once that's happened, the community is generating or parts of the community are generating a revenue denominated in Bitcoin. There's lots of opportunities around that I want to continue to investigate. For example, it makes sense, especially because these are quite decentralized organizations in the fact that there's not one mining farm. There's ultimately hundreds around that you have to have local people who you train to be able to service and manage these systems. So one, you're gaining skills locally, but the natural way to compensate them is in Bitcoin, because that's the way you're earning revenue anyway. And then now you have these members of the local community who have this source of revenue as Bitcoin. For some elements of that, they would want to convert into local currency. And they'd want to be able to directly use these to pay for certain things. So what happens is slowly other members of the community will start to accept and utilize and so on. And so from that seed, usage of Bitcoin in general spreads out. But again, eventually some will be ready and comfortable with self-custodying, but to get involved quickly and easily and to deal with issues of backing up my keys and recovering them in the event I've lost, and having an easy user experience, and also having features adding functionality which is right or correct for that community all in one place. The idea of setting up a federation for that community and people using Fedi as a way to connect to that federation and other federations that may make sense for different users because they can pick and choose. It seems like a very logical step. So I'm keen to continue to explore that as well.
Yeah. I mean, you can see many, forgive me for the buzzword, synergies coming out of...
It's the word synergies is a good word, but it's been so maligned, so abused that now it's like in the sort of the naughty corner forever, you know. Yeah. We have to get it out of the naughty corner. It's a useful word when
I'll say it proudly.
Correctly.
There's potential synergies that
say it loud.
Come out, because we were talking about Fedipools yesterday too.
Yeah.
And you think if the mining infrastructure in this part of the world gets to a point where it's significantly robust and you have multiple different operators who have the ability to set up a federation and create a Fedipool, and then maybe their employees are getting paid out in Bitcoin straight to a federation via Fedi or something like that. Like you could see an ecosystem developing around like the mining community. Like, all right, we don't want to point to Binance Pool anymore. Let's create our own Fedi pool. We have enough hash rate. Yeah,
the ability to take control, and in this case, it will be Bitcoin miners, and then also you can lower the costs of payouts because you can pay it out over Lightning directly.
Yeah.
So it's just very convenient. It'll be lower costs. It'll be quicker. It's a win-win.
Yeah, we're learning the lesson of lower cost on Lightning right now.
Yeah. I mean,
what's your take on all this fee congestion?
For me, it's all good. For every time, for Bitcoin to win, it has to be tested, and it has to go through all the different tests, and then it passes them. And while it hasn't gone through a test, then it's still in the process of winning. It wins as a sort of like a point in time when it's gone through every test and passed. So I see it as this, think about one of these sort of games where at the end of each level you have like a big boss, and you have to beat that to go to the next level. And until you've beaten the big boss, you can't go to the next level. Yep. And until you've beaten the final boss, you can't finish the game. So by definition, if there are certain things that we are waiting to deal with, then we're still playing. We're still in the game. We haven't finished the game.
Yeah.
And so so then once you realize that, you want to run to the final boss and just like deal with it. So high fees, and guess what happens? Every time it happens, we get stronger, we get better, we get faster. So now fees are up and higher. So certain exchanges are now looking to implement Lightning and if that never happened, then we could have been waiting another year or so before they implemented it, if we're just waiting on their good graces. But now they have a need to, it's prioritized and it happens. And once they've implemented it, then people use it, and you mass educate a lot of people against all the FUD around Lightning goes away, because people go, wait, this is actually, it's really easy and it's really convenient. So why were people saying to me otherwise? And then they start to work out who to trust and who not to trust. So but that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the high fees. So bring on the high fees, because then it leads to much, much lower fees, because people start architecting the right way as opposed to shorthand ways that work in a simplified market.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. But it's been funny to see the last 7 days, people are like using this high V environment and pointing at Lightning like, look, Lightning's done nothing. And it's like, I wouldn't go that far. But is Lightning ready for the main stage, do you think?
Yeah, I think it is. People will switch over to Lightning, it will have issues, and then people will correct the issues. But we've got organizations who are doing, huge numbers of transactions. Again, I don't like singling out because everybody's doing incredible stuff. But just I was on a stage with Zebedee a few days ago, and they're dealing with transactions for Square Enix, this publicly traded gaming company, $6 billion market cap, which is very, very high transaction volume, and they're handling it. And other Lightning service providers are handling volumes for significantly sized offerings and organizations. So if there is a blip here or a blip there, we have the resources and skills to just then, that's an opportunity for an entrepreneur to come in and provide the liquidity and the resources for it. And then they'll correct it and it just gets stronger.
Yeah.
But it's each one of these, that's the nature of being anti-fragile. It's not never, people confuse being, the opposite of fragile is sturdy or tough. That's not the opposite of fragile. Fragile is when it's attacked, it gets weaker and it breaks. Sturdy is when it's attacked, it stays the same. Anti-fragile is when it's attacked, it gets stronger, it gets better, it gets faster. That is the Bitcoin community. That is Lightning and so on. So if it's not being attacked, it doesn't need to do it. But as soon as it's attacked, it's like the Incredible Hulk. The more he's attacked, there's actually, I'm a geek for, you're going to see, you didn't ask me, I thought you would. Well, the other two events I wanted to go to, other than Hackers Congress, and the other one was Comic-Con in San Diego. I've never gone, and I'm a super comic book geek, and I really want to go. It won't be this year again, unfortunately, because it conflicts, but I do want to go at some point before I'm 60. And then the other one is Anime Expo, because I'm just sort of into anime and comics and so on. But so comic geekery, Incredible Hulk, by all accounts, people say who's the strongest superhero and so on, and many people say Superman and this and the other, and you've got the Marvel and DC universe. But by many accounts in the Marvel universe, which is Captain America, all that sort of stuff, Incredible Hulk is technically, as written in the comic books, the strongest because there is actually no limits to how strong he is. But as he's attacked, he gets stronger and stronger. And if he's attacked more, he gets even more stronger. So at the beginning, he doesn't seem that strong. But then if you attack him, then he gets stronger. And there was one point where every single good superhero in the Marvel Universe tried to attack the Incredible Hulk. And they couldn't beat him because he just kept getting bigger and bigger and stronger and stronger. There is actually no limit to how strong he is. But he will always get strong enough to meet the demand and no more. And then when it goes away, it retracts back, which is the essence of an efficient anti-fragile system. Why have all these resources consumed when you don't need to? When it happens, you react and you get stronger, you get better, you get faster. Yeah. So Bitcoin, it's not green, it's orange. But we are the equivalent.
The digital Hulk.
The digital Hulk, yeah.
No, but we're seeing that's how it's happened historically too. You definitely experienced this at Coinfloor, yeah. Like in 2017, the fees go up, we have the SegWit battle. SegWit got implemented. We've had this lull for a few years now. Taproot gets implemented. Ordinals and inscriptions figure out a way to get all this data in, and now I wouldn't even call it an attack. It's just we're exploring a part of it.
Yeah, attack's the wrong word, because I don't want people to feel that I think these things are attack. It's stuff happens, the system is stressed,
yeah,
and then it reacts and it responds because that's when it needs to do it.
Yeah,
and that's reminds you of why this is such an incredible platform, because it reacts that way.
Yeah, and then to the people poo-pooing Lightning, that's one thing I think, particularly in the crypto sphere, they really misunderstand. With Lightning, they'll point at network capacity, amount of channels, and they'll say it's not. Look at all the wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum. It's like nowhere near that. And that's actually like a massive vindication of Lightning, because you can do so much with so little. Like the amount of volume you can do within these channels if you set them up properly. If you set them up properly, it works pretty well. Like we set up our Lightning node in 2019 for the company that we use on the site. We get a lot of volume because of podcasting 2.0 and just people tipping and running transactions through our node. And we have like maybe monthly
Yep.
channel management stuff that we need to do. But other than that, it's been working.
And as I said, there are organizations who are now, setting themselves up or set up to be able to support people or communities however they want to. So if they want to have it fully self-hosted, you can do that. If you want it to be hosted by others but managed by this community, you can do it. Or if you want it to be fully outsourced. And then where there are sort of fundamental limits, there is work happening. That a big example of federations are a way of scaling beyond any limit of Lightning as well, because effectively it takes one Lightning channel, and makes it available to 10,000 people, which has another level again of scaling as well. So there is no, when you combine all of these elements with Bitcoin, with Lightning, with Fedimints, and with Nostr, I now think you've got this complete, obviously with all of the apps and services around it as well, but you have all the sort of fundamental levels needed to do anything you can imagine, but quicker, faster, better than any other network in a more decentralized way, with no single point of risk, no single point of control. So we're ready to go.
Yeah, you're distributing the scaling because like within a Fedimint, you can transact back and forth with other members. That stays encapsulated in that mint. And then if you need to interact with Bitcoin, Lightning Invoice or another federation, you just use Lightning Network and it shoots over. And
it's but as a Bitcoin community, we're ready to go. There's no intrinsic limits in terms of what we do. There never were, but the elements of the architecture are now becoming clearer. We just need to keep focusing on our game. It's like, and as time goes by, as these stresses happen, it will become clearer and clearer why it's the right approach. And you just have to keep focusing on your game.
Yeah. Do you feel any more sense of urgency now compared to in the past? Where at Coinfloor, do you think the mission's only?
I've had the same date in my mind since since 2019, but I was public about it in 2020. So I made a tweet, and I made it my pinned tweet since 2020. And I changed it at the end of last year to a retweet of the tweet. But, and it basically stated that I thought 2023 is the year, first of all, 2018 to 2023 was the year Bitcoin is the years Bitcoin is attacked, and 2023 is the year Bitcoin wins. And I said, you can only win when you're attacked and you survive the attack. That's just like, you can only win when you have that final challenge. So I had a strong sense of urgency over the last few years since that tweet in 2020 to look for a solution for the missing pieces, because I thought Lightning was a solution for payments, but what was the solution for discovery? What was the solution for functional extensibility that also was decentralized and so on, and it didn't require a single monolithic solution, but it was highly decentralized. And then in 2021, I bumped into Eric, and a short while later, Eric bumped into Justin, and then we all connected. And it became clear that this was another key element in terms of the extensibility. And then last year as well, we saw, although it'd been in the background being worked on, the same for Fedimint, it's been worked on for 3 years, but it's just in the background getting to a level of technical maturity. Same for Nostr. And last year again, the end of last year, Nostr hit that inflection point. And now there's still a lot of work from a lot of different people to do, but I feel like you've got the people with the right mindset, we've got all the tools, we can do anything that you see on other platforms here better, faster, in a more decentralized way, in a more censorship resistant way, So we just have to get on and do it. So I feel I don't want to take it for granted, but I feel a lot more confident now because I can see all the different elements, and they're all. So we have functionally complete offering. We just need to, and we've got resources in terms of funding as well. You just saw a recent funding for Nostr from OpenSats as well. We've got significant funding for Lightning-related projects. We have funding for Fedimint. If I have my will, there'll be significantly more. And so you're going to see the fruits of all of this on Nostr, on Lightning, on Fedimint, as for over the coming months. And I'm really excited to see tons of entrepreneurs coming out building on all these platforms, and that's the way you know for sure. When people can just see it working, it instantly makes sense. When you try to talk about it, it doesn't. So I'm asked to talk about it, of course, because we've just raised, etc. But I would very much prefer to just show people stuff and get them to play around with it, and breaking in, and then it'll be broken and we fix it and so on. But the quicker people find holes and issues, the quicker we fix them, and then you have a complete solution for people.
Yeah. The tools.
That's what I'm most keen about.
Yeah, the tools are all there.
Tools are all there. Let's just get on and build now. Build. That's what excites me the most over the coming weeks and months.
Yeah. I mean, when you see how quickly the ecosystem around Nostr has been built, it's pretty fascinating. Like, obviously, it started with the Twitter clients. Now we have like Medium-like clients. You can do music clients.
Yeah, because it's a discovery. All these sites are discovery. The thing that makes them useful, the ones that it's replacing, is there's some mechanism to discover people that you don't know, but you have some sort of shared need or interest. And Nostr, that's what's powerful about it. It provides you that.
Yeah.
Now you got that, and then you want to be able to add functionality. Okay, you have the Fedimint, and you want to be able to then pay for it at a low cost, high speed, and that's Lightning. Then that is every single app in existence is can now be replicated with those elements.
Yeah, it's
everything.
It's just, and when you think about like opening up, like the ability for people to build on Fedimints too.
Yep.
And like looking at what just happened on Nostr, like if that's replicated there, like this could happen rather quickly.
It will happen. That's why people think, well, 2023, that seems like a lot to happen. Well, no. And also look at what's happened with AI. It's in a matter of the level of development on open source AI protocols now are some of the latest models are supposed to be 97% as good as GPT-4.
Yeah.
In 2 months of it being released, and they're open source and they can run on your home computer. So it's like, we're in this accelerating loop when we have these tools that allow you to innovate so quickly.
Yeah.
Just give people the tools and step back and just, watch in awe, what the power of the open source community can do.
Yeah. And people are more receptive than ever, I believe, to finding and using these tools.
That's the belief, yeah.
Yeah. I could sit here for like 3 more hours and dive into you. I know you've got to go though.
Unfortunately, yep, I do. But it was good. It was good coming and talking. It's like I've seen these interviews happen from the other side of the screen, so it's super surreal. Even being in Austin, it's like I remember the first time I went to New York, and I saw like the potholes and the smoke coming from it, and I felt like I'd already been there because I've seen it in every single movie ever growing up. And it's the same here. It's like, I feel like I've been here before. This weird deja vu, but
well, it's so much better in person.
It's much better in person, but it's just so weird that you can come somewhere and not see someone, and then you start talking like it was like yesterday when you actually haven't actually met up in person until that moment.
Well, that's one of the most beautiful things about Bitcoin is everybody who's in it, working on it, we have this like shared belief as like a base as soon as we meet. It's like, all right, I know you're a good person at heart because you're in this trench with me. And then it just makes everything easier after that.
It's a great community.
Yeah. Well, keep crushing it, man.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your support as well. You know, through 1031. Again, I always say you guys were one of the first cheerleaders before we were even a commercial company. It was just an open source idea, and I remember you were walking
on the trail. There,
it was out on the trail.
Yeah,
it was on the trail, and you called it like we didn't know that was when it was just purely an open source project, and we hadn't even thought about making it a commercial entity. But you're saying, well, it doesn't matter. We'll still sort of just donate money to Fedimint, and just as a gift, and just keep working on it. Keep. You said effectively the same thing. Keep crushing it. Keep working on it, and I'm sure something will come from it. So that was really important for us to make us sort of aware we were in a bubble, and make people aware that there are people outside who, you know, just really believe in what we're doing.
Yeah.
So that was really, really valuable to get to where we got now, and really appreciate that.
Well, no need to thank me. All thanks goes to you, Eric, Justin, everybody else working on Fedi and the Fedimint, the open source protocol. Because I remember when Eric dropped the mailing list email in like July of last year, and I was like, holy crap, this is going to be massive. And then fast forward to, or it wasn't July of last year, it was July of 2021. Then fast forward.
Yeah,
fast forward to Bitcoin 2022, and then you're on stage with him. You did your presentation. You guys had that panel,
and then the panel afterwards, which was Aaron Van Weerden was moderating, and it was Eric and Casey Rodemo, actually.
Yeah.
And then I remember afterwards also Casey was mentioning he's working on some idea to do with like tracking every single Satoshi, and we were like, oh, okay, interesting. But I think he thought it was like this sort of art project, you know. So
now it's now we've got a lot of fees on the network, which is
yeah, it's all interesting. I think the most interesting stuff happening it's all Bitcoin stuff. It's just which is fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Okay,
we're gonna win.
Always.
All right, Obi, thank you. Safe travels to New York tomorrow.
Matey, thank you very much.
Thank you. That's all we got today, freaks. Peace and love. Tiki.